Okay, so we're diving into some pretty choppy waters today. We've got this situation, the Trump administration, and they're trying to use these wartime powers for deportation.
And the thing is, there is no war declared right now.
Right, exactly. So a federal judge already ruled it's like totally unlawful.
Yeah, and it gets even weirder after that. I mean, beyond just like the normal appeals and stuff, there were some reports that seemed pretty credible, saying that some officials in the administration were just like straight up ignoring what the judge said.
Like, hold on. So you're saying they're just like ignoring a ruling from the judicial branch?
That seems to be what happened. It's like one part of the government saying, nah, we don't care what you said.
Wild. And then on top of that, Trump himself, like, publicly goes after the judge, even talks about impeaching the guy.
Yeah, this is not your run-of-the-mill legal back and forth. This feels different, like a real challenge to the court's authority.
Totally. And then to make things even crazier, uh, Chief Justice Roberts of the Supreme Court comes out with a statement addressing all this.
Which is bonkers. You never see that. For the Chief Justice to just like weigh in on a case that's still going on outside of like an official ruling.
Right. Super rare. They usually stay quiet so people don't think they're biased or whatever.
Exactly. So that's what makes this deep dive so important.
Yeah, we got to figure this out. What made Roberts break his silence?
Like, what does this whole fight between the White House and the courts tell us about the rule of law in the U.S. right now? Is it healthy? Is it not?
Big questions. So where do we even start unpacking all this?
Well, I think we got to define the rule of law first. What does that even mean? Basically, it means that everyone, even the president, has to follow the law. They're accountable to it. And that's exactly what Roberts is defending with his statement.
Okay, so everyone's on the same page.
Like,
Rule of law.
Yeah.
Now, back to the deportation thing. The judge said the administration was misusing these wartime powers, like they're for specific situations during a war, not just regular immigration stuff.
Exactly. And, it wasn't just a difference of opinion on the law. We've got these reports saying officials didn't just appeal, they flat out ignored the court order and kept deporting people.
It's one thing to fight it out in court, right?
Yeah.
To just be like, nope, not listening.
And then you've got Trump attacking the judge in public,
Yeah.
talking impeachment, the whole 9 yards.
So things are already tense, right? And then the Department of Justice tries to get the judge removed from the case.
Which is super unusual. Usually you need like proof the judge is biased or did something wrong. Legal experts were saying there was nothing like that here.
Right, so it felt like they were trying to silence him,
Yeah.
undermine the court's independence.
Yeah, it did not look good. And that's the context for Robert's statement, this huge, unprecedented thing.
Yeah, he said, for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision, and he refers to the normal review process that exists for that purpose. I mean, wow.
It's a big deal because Roberts has never done anything like this before, especially during Trump's second term, where there have been so many legal battles already.
Right, so he's drawing a line in the sand.
What's so interesting is that he's not just giving his opinion. He's stating a legal fact, reminding everyone how the government is supposed to work. You don't like a ruling, fine. But that doesn't mean you get to impeach the judge. There's a whole process for appeals and reviews.
And the fact that he felt he had to say this publicly?
It means he's worried about what some people are calling this creeping normalization, where people just ignore the rule of law more and more.
This isn't just about one case. It's about the whole judiciary, the checks and balances that are supposed to keep our government working.
Exactly. Think about how our government is set up. The courts are a separate branch for a reason. They're supposed to keep the president and Congress in check. If a president could just impeach any judge who disagreed with him.
Then the courts wouldn't be independent anymore. They'd just be puppets.
And that's not how democracy works. It's dangerous. Now, realistically, this judge probably won't get impeached. It takes a 2/3 vote in the Senate, and the Republicans don't have that.
But even just talking about it,
Yeah.
it puts pressure on the courts. It's like a threat.
Exactly. Rule against us and you'll be sorry. That kind of message can really scare judges, make them less likely to stand up for what they think is right.
That's why Roberts had to speak up. He's defending the courts. He could have stayed quiet, hoped it would blow over.
But he didn't. It shows how seriously he takes this threat to the judicial system.
Okay, so we've talked about the big picture. Now let's get back to the actual deportation case.
Hmm.
Remember, the judge ordered a stop to certain deportations.
Yeah, and then we heard from these two Trump officials who told Axios they basically ignored the order, worked with DHS and Stephen Miller to send those planes to El Salvador anyway.
It's kind of shocking that they would admit to that so openly. What does that tell us about how they see the courts?
It's definitely worrying. It shows a real lack of respect for the judicial process. And then you've got those DOJ lawyers in court when they were asked about it.
Yeah, they wouldn't give straight answers.
Right. It just fueled the suspicion that they really did violate the court order.
And then the New York Times did their own investigation, looked at the flight data, and it looks like those flights did take off after the judge's ruling.
Some officials were even making fun of the idea of following court orders. It's like they don't even care about pretending to respect the process anymore.
Scary. And remember, the judge's initial ruling was because he said Trump was using these wartime powers illegally in the first place.
What's interesting is that even the Wall Street Journal was concerned about this, and they're owned by Rupert Murdoch, who's usually pro-Trump. They even said something about Trump officials acting like they're above the law.
We saw those quotes too, right? Where those officials were saying they don't care what judges think about foreign policy and national security.
Yeah, and those were high-ranking officials saying that. It's
Right.
direct attack on the whole idea of checks and balances.
It's a big deal. This whole situation might not be a full-blown constitutional crisis yet.
But it's definitely a sign that respect for the rule of law is eroding.
Yeah, it feels like the administration thinks they can just do whatever they want. Now, some people will point to the fact that the Supreme Court has given Trump immunity in certain cases.
And they might say that means he's above the law.
So we need to be clear here. Immunity from prosecution is not the same as being able to ignore court orders. What Roberts is talking about is the basic rule that everyone in the government has to follow the law, including the president.
Exactly. If you start ignoring court orders just because you don't like the ruling, that's a slippery slope. It basically means one person gets to decide what the law is.
And that destroys the whole point of having an independent judiciary. It's like going back to the days of kings and queens, where one person had all the power.
So it's good that people like Roberts are speaking out about this. But it's not enough to just talk. They have to actually follow the law themselves. Actions speak louder than words.
So that's the big takeaway from this deep dive. Roberts' statement shows a huge conflict between the White House and the courts. It's about the limits of presidential power and the importance of following the law.
It's a really important moment. I mean, think about it. The head of the Supreme Court publicly criticizing the president, that's almost unheard of.
It shows just how serious this is. The courts are supposed to be a check on the president's power, and Roberts is trying to protect that.
So here's the question for you to think about. We've got these two big problems. The White House is claiming more and more power for itself, and they seem to be ignoring the courts more and more. What happens if that keeps going? What does it mean for our democracy if the checks and balances stop working?
That's something we all need to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
And until next time, stay curious.